and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
So much craziness this week. Of course, January 6th whimpered by this week. You know, it kind of...
that was pretty awesome. Like, I kind of forgot about it for a long time.
It was kind of lovely in that regard. I mean, there was an attempt, certainly, to... I mean, I'm not downplaying the threat or recognizing, you know, lacking recognition for the insanity that was that day, but also turning it into a potential recurring 9/11 is a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
I think people are, news media bit trying to remind people what the attack was really about, and that it was not some sort of like tourist taking a wrong turn situation like the right wants to, push it as. And Ted Cruz groveling on Tucker Carlson this week to try and hide that very fact, when he called it a terrorist act, which it was under every definition of terrorism. If you try to use violence or the threat of violence to manipulate the politics of a country or a system, that's terrorism. That's what it is.
He said it like 3 different times on the record.
Yeah, right. And Tucker made him walk it back 9 different times. And the idea was that, all they did was attack cops. It wasn't terrorism. Why is it terrorism? Because they were trying to stop, I guess, the hang Mike Pence and the building of the gallows and the threatening to shoot Nancy Pelosi and murder AOC and literally storming the nation's capital to stop the counting of electoral votes. Doesn't qualify as a politically manipulative act in any way. All right, it's just silly. I mean, the argument was ridiculous, but and an ongoing problem that the right has had is that, on the one hand, they yell at Democrats for, tarnishing them and saying that they are all like the January 6th people who attacked cops. And I don't remember ever doing that. But they tend to have this thing where they just cannot let go of them. They will not quit cloaking these people in Republican normalcy. It's not us that's making the case that they are one and the same. It's the Republican establishment, essentially. It is every time somebody like Ted Cruz tries to stiff-arm this a little bit, as ham-handed as it was, and as an obvious ploy to tee him up for 2024 as it was, he has to walk it back because everybody's like, no, they are us. That's not terrorism. That's a legit aspect of Republican politics these days. Totally ridiculous, and obviously a big thing to, foment the big lie. Now, there's been a couple of really fun movements this week around the big dumb lie. That led to the coup last year. The crazy coup that actually had 0 chance of succeeding. I know people want to go, they were this close. They were not this close. It was ham-handed, stupid, run completely by idiots. If any of these guys had a brain cell between them, they'd have just won the election.
Exactly.
If they were capable of pulling out, because I'm telling you, as wartime moments go, switching administrations midstream during a pandemic isn't necessarily a hard thing to talk, or a difficult thing to talk the American public out of. You could have said, look, it's messy, but, we're on track here. Let us keep going where we're going. We're taking this seriously, blah, blah, blah. Trump was incapable of doing that. And everybody going, if he'd only done this, if he'd only done this, if he'd done any of those things, he'd be a different human being. That, Trump's problem, and I'm glad Biden finally called it out this week, is that above all else, above all factors, he's a loser. He's had every possible advantage in his entire life. Every advantage. Born rich, to a dad who was already entrenched in New York real estate, which is, you know, a Gordian knot of criminality that everybody's afraid to pull the thread on because the whole thing will fall apart. So you're protected by the noise of mafia and nonsense and foreign investment. So you just kind of can operate on this largely, you know, lawless system, padding, you know, feathering your nest and padding your growth in New York because there are bigger fish to fry and worse problems, and then 9/11 and yada yada. And Trump manages, you know, to take his father's building empire that actually constructs buildings, creates things, and as soon as his dad passes away and passes it to his, his namesake, or I guess no, it isn't his namesake. His namesake died. His second son, Don,
right?
He turns it into a branding endeavor, and you know, takes something that created physical things and makes it a even less valuable than the Kardashian empire. It is, materially, no question. The Kardashians built an empire in the last 2 decades that is materially stronger and more financially stable than the Trump organization, which is an absurdity that could happen. Do you know how much of a loser you have to be to blow that kind of money and that kind of a head start and be lapped by the Kardashians? Holy smokes, right? So, and then the guy manages to become president because of a 20-year campaign, to hate Hillary Clinton, that extremists left and right can get on board with.
Yeah.
He skates by on the Electoral College, gets in office losing, 3 million, getting 3 million fewer votes in the Electoral College, in the popular vote. Squeaks in by the Electoral College on 75,000 vote margin in states where, like, progressives were holding their nose and like, I don't like Hillary. I don't know. Maybe he'll be fine.
Those emails.
But the emails, right? 4 years later, gets just stomped in an election. In a year when any normal person would have seen this surrounded by as many Machiavellian psychopaths as he surrounded himself with, would have seized this as an accidental worldwide wag the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God bureaucrats aren't in charge. I'm the guy. This is a terrible thing that's happening in the United States, and it's crashing the world economy. It will definitely damage the American economy, but since I'm a great businessman who wrote Art of the Deal, I could turn this whole thing around, right?
Only I can solve it.
That's right. If any of what he said about himself was true, any of it, dude would have won the election. He would have. In the beginning, before the primaries, it was teeing up to look that way. But, and then we find, the internal polling starts rolling out that he's going to lose. And he starts flop sweating at his own rallies. I covered all of them on my live stream. Anybody wants to go back and look at any of Trump's rallies, I did them all live. It was absurd. Every 2 days, where, I'm doing a whole thing. All of it, 45 minutes to 2 hours, however much he did in any given town.
You've got a sour stomach now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have a bit of a bellyache this morning because
it's just reflux from covering the live
2 years.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, watching him start to realize he was losing and then shift the message to, I'm not losing, it's rigged. I can't possibly admit I'm a loser. Right. And seeding that all the way up to the election. To the point where he's like, saying that the recognition of what was going to be the red mirage on election night, meaning that all of his voters voted in person. A lot of the red states were going to wait to start counting the mail-in votes and the absentee ballots until the next morning, or stop at midnight so it looked like there were fewer, right? And then count them over the next couple of days because we were all voting from home because of reality worldwide. This is not
don't start with reality.
See, if you had made the case Trump would have had a case for the manipulation of the election using COVID if it was simply an epidemic. If it was simply in our country. Weird outbreak in the United States, spreading a little bit into Canada. I don't know how they avoid it. Is used by Democrats to manipulate. This is worldwide. There's no question. Worldwide, sciences, societies, governments fighting this thing as hard as they can, watching their citizens die, watching their medical systems being overwhelmed. The reality of it, worldwide. But suddenly it was a gift to Democrats, even though the Democrats set up a pandemic response team and Trump scuttled it. Had it been in place, we might have been ahead of the ball and
really,
yes,
man, we've never. Well, I mean, I guess it did. It did have a chance with some of the other the bird flu and the SARS and things like that. I guess it was in place then, but boy, I really wonder what it would have been like had we had that in place.
Well, I don't think we would have been able to fully avoid the damage coming because it would have been large. But I will say that had it been in place and had it been more effective, there's a very strong chance that it wouldn't have hit, the worst of it wouldn't have hit until possibly after the election. We might have been able to stave off the Trump administration might have been able to look like they were staving off the worst of it until the election itself by looking competent, by simply just using the system the Obama administration left for them. But again, this requires Trump to be a wholly different person. He can't be himself and win. It's just not possible. That and Biden's statement this week about he's a defeated former president. Let me truncate that for you. Loser. He's a loser. Every time he's just about to grab the brass ring because somebody else is giving him a lift, he misses it. He whiffs it. Borrows $56 million from his brother and sister's trust fund to keep the Trump organization of the lights on. Not to invest in something to make some sort of fantastic deal that'll set them up for the next decade. No, $56 million for spackle. The money that he's raised from all of his people to fight election fraud and all that stuff, it's all gone. It's all gone. This war chest idea is nonsense. It's as transparent as, as Chinese COVID numbers. It's silly. No wonder he got along with Xi Jinping and Putin. They all tell the same story. Everything is fine. I'm awesome. Nobody can handle this but me, and I'm the strongest person you can put in charge of it. None of it being true. We got to take a break. When we come back, the cyber ninjas shut down this week.
Yeah.
And the reason why is, I think, the cherry on top of the big dumb lie Sunday. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820. WCPT820.com is the website if you want to listen to all your favorite progressive podcasters and radio personalities. They do both now because of the Sexy Liberal Podcasting Network. You can also get this show in chunks on there as well. Go to sexyliberal.com. And let's see. That's all the websites I can talk about in one break. We'll be back. I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So, there has been a lot of, focus on different states in the big dumb lie. And Arizona was probably the biggest one, and largely because it seems like Trump was counting on Fox to help, cradle the ball over the finish line for him on, in terms of the big dumb lie. On election night, they were supposed to hold the line and make that puffery appear more real every time, that until such time as once the mail-in votes started coming in, they could claim they were all fake and all that kind of stuff. And then they could kind of drag it out and end up staying in office. They could pull a George W. Bush, 500, 2 years later and a count of 500 votes. Al Gore won the 1999-2000 election. He just did. He factually did. In the recount, Gore won Florida. But ship had sailed. 2 years had passed, yada, yada. And so the idea is that maybe they could pull the same thing against Biden. Already in office, already in power. They held off a Supreme Court, a liberal out of the Supreme Court that might still tilt it their way. And, fingers crossed, we'll end up getting control and we'll just hang out since we're already in office. We've set up the Supreme Court to deliver it to us, which they weren't going to do because they were there for one purpose. Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, less Gorsuch, but the other two are there specifically to overturn Roe v. Wade. That's 100% why they're there. They have no other real purpose or any other, it seems, legal knowledge whatsoever. Like they are one-note Supreme Court voters. They are one-issue voters. And they were just going to count on this, that the public would be ready to move on. Trump won. It's just, all right, shrug it off. Yeah. The problem was, in the first, in 2016, he was an unknown entity. And so there was a big outcry that he lost the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College. Crap, here we go. Let's just get on with it. Nobody was prepared to do that. Not at the clip we were losing people, not at his kind of ham-handed way that he was going to roll out the vaccines, not at this, we're getting out of Afghanistan while staying at the same time nonsense. All that. We just weren't going to do it anymore. And his just sort of disassociation from anything domestically related to, the internal workings of the United States other than a control point in money making. And it was because it was the only thing he kind of understood was transactional relationships. So Arizona, though, was the tipping point for it's where his brain snapped. He didn't like Wisconsin.
You think it was Georgia when he called and asked for that very specific amount of votes?
No. That was like where the desperation made him do stupid things. The switch was thrown, oh my God, we're behind the 8 ball, this is done. What the heck just happened? Was when Fox called Arizona for Biden. Which is not only the case, and was always the case, and is still the case, but became more the case after the Cyber Ninjas audit. There was recount upon recount. Cyber Ninjas did an audit, ended up giving more votes to Biden. Same with the Wisconsin recount. Every time they do one of these things, in all these Republican, largely held states, it is, if you're going to go conspiratorial and suspicious, it is very strange that Republicans in states that Trump lost by a whisper are telling him, dude, don't look. Because every time they look, they find more Biden votes. If there was a tee-up or anybody trying to give him a little bit of a benefit, he still lost anyways. And they're like, well, we could only fix so much. Remember the whole thing about, Rudy's whole storyline was that the algorithm broke. They had planned for a certain number of fake votes, but it was too much, so they had to go print some or whatever, which sounds like that was their plan because it's so very oddly specific and also nonsense. It sounds like they were trying to help him win. They couldn't possibly do enough without being overt and getting caught, and so therefore they were like, all right, he lost, but only by a little. And then every time somebody, Trump goes, I didn't lose, I want to look. They're like, dude, don't look. Stop it. Trust us. You do not want to look into this. Because what you will find is if there are any fake votes, like the villages in Florida, they're all Trump voters. If somebody reran ballots to try and get them to count twice, it was a dude who'd worked for the RNC who was volunteering.
Over and over.
Yeah, over and over and over again. Thank you, Melissa, for the super chat. He absolutely lost, and embarrassingly so, in keeping with his entire life. I mean, the man is selling a coffee table book to keep the lights on at Mar-a-Lago right now. I'm not kidding. This is just stage 5 of him fleecing his followers and giving them this, allowing him to play footsie with people who are like, you gonna run again? We just covered on my live stream yesterday, John, this Glenn Beck interview he did in November that he just aired. And Glenn Beck has COVID or some sort of major head cold or whatever. He sounds awful. And he's had COVID before. So he's not a healthy dude anyways. So if I was his fan, I'd be like, rest. Rough. He sounded really rough. Well, he did the wraparounds for this interview, the kind of his own pretend version of 60 Minutes. I sat down with the former president, that kind of stuff, after he'd already gotten sick again. And and then he's been worse day by day. He's now doing the show from the garage while everybody on his other, on the Blaze is doing their show from inside the studio or wherever. Like they're sequestering him away for serious reasons from everybody. And everybody on that show, bless their heart, has massive comorbidities. That's all I'm saying. It is visually apparent. It's not a good thing. So the Cyber Ninjas guys, Trump is teeing this thing up, and Arizona was the moment where they're still mad at Fox. They're still enraged at Fox for calling Arizona. Wow, that segment went by really fast. We're already at the break. When I come back, Cyber Ninjas has shut down because they are being fined $50,000 a day. Why is Cyber Ninjas being fined $50,000 a day? By the way, they're also broke right now. They went over budget doing their audit and spent all the people's money. I don't know what the budget was spent on because there were a lot of volunteers. We'll work that out when we come back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.